Welcome in to the Arkansas Sports Network's Hometown Sports Football Preview, proudly presented by Arkansas Tech University, D3 Auto Sales, and by Metcalf Trucking Company. Today we sit down with the head coach of the Harmony Grove, Ouachita County Hornets, Ernie Horskamp.
I'd like to welcome everybody in today. We got head coach Horskamp here of the, y'all like to be called Ouachita County, or like to be called Harmony Grove?
Usually we just go by Harmony Grove.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Well, someone called us or told us in a comment last year, no, it's Ouachita County. You can't say that. So
we go by just Harmony Grove.
So the head coach here of the Harmony Grove Hornets had a successful year last year, 9-3, undefeated in conference play. Season ended in the quarterfinals against Boonville, eventual state champs. Talk to me about last year's team a little bit, and what you liked about it, what you think y'all can improve.
Well, obviously, anytime you win a conference championship, you're going to be happy with that. You mentioned going undefeated in conference, 5-0 in conference with some big wins against Fordyce and Rising and Barton, who all just very talented teams. The games against Fordyce and Barton, just close games, and be able to come out and win a couple one-score games there in the fourth quarter. We thought it said a lot about our players. Had a lot of seniors last year, graduated 16, which is that's for a Class 3A school. That's a lot of seniors. Those guys were very successful throughout their junior high and high school careers. And lost 3 All-State players in Landon Garrett, Caleb Johnson, and Quentin Jones. Those guys will definitely be missed, along with several others. But life goes on in high school.
Right.
High school football, that's the way it is. And I think those guys set a great example of how to just show up to work every single day. Obviously, nobody wins without talent. Those guys were very talented. There's no doubt about it. But their work ethic, their commitment, their dedication to being successful was what made us good. And we felt like we were a top 4 team season long. I know last year got off to a bumpy start. Mentioned to you off the air, we actually lost 3 starting offensive linemen to season-ending injuries early in the year.
Yes.
And we got off to kind of a bumpy start, but once that offensive line kind of started clicking, we started rolling. And that's usually how it goes anyway. But, just ran into Boonville, a great team, eventual state champions. And, they ran into them in the final 8 in the quarterfinals. Probably felt like I mentioned, I think we were a top 4 team. Felt like we belonged with the Mansfield, Prescott's, and Glen Rose. Felt like we belonged with those guys. But, you look back on it, you're very pleased with the season, and just unfortunately came up short.
Y'all, did you lose any sleep that week? We came off Dex golf?
Oh, tons. Yeah, tons of it.
For sure.
He's a good one. Had a great football team. Just the way they play, that run game, and then have a guy like Golf, just that X factor. With Harding got a good one.
Yes.
He is. Tell a lot of people, there's a lot of Division I schools that missed out on that guy.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely good. You talked a little bit about your seniors that moved on. You had 16, so like you said, in 3A, that's a huge class.
Right.
I've done other interviews. I've had coaches talking about having 7 or 8 guys saying it's a pretty good sized class.
Right.
And, you're like, yeah, I guess that's right. 2A, 3A's like that. And tell me a little bit about your background, Coach. How long you been here? Where'd you get started? How it all came about?
Well, I'm beginning my 7th year here at Harmony Grove. Got here in 2018. Was my first season. We actually the conference realignment affected us this year. We're actually in the same conference and playing some similar opponents that we were my first 2 years here. Loved it here. Had some successful teams. Mentioned quarterfinals. Went to Had another quarterfinal run another year, made it to the semifinals back in 2019. Been very blessed here. Very very hardworking kids and talent to work with, and the support of the school and the administration has just been top notch. You can't, you're not going to have success without that support, and we definitely have it here. Before I came here, I spent 14 years just down the road in Bearden. 7 years as an assistant and 7 years as the head coach there. Another good place. Just felt like it was time to move on, and like I said, enjoy. No, that didn't even have to move.
Yeah.
Instead of 1 minute to work, I drive 11, so it's not too bad.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, definitely really close communities. Sounds like you've got a lot of experience. Looks like 7 here now, so you're 21 years in.
Right.
14 as a head coach. Done some great things here, like you mentioned, a couple quarterfinals, been in the semis in 2019. Built this tradition up. Bearden's had a great tradition as well during that time you were there. Talk to me a little bit about your guys last year that are returning, that may have, you got some all-conference and all-state guys coming back.
Mentioned some guys that got some postseason recognition, some awards. Start up front, we returned an all-state offensive and defensive lineman in Peyton Ross. Just a great football player. About 6 foot, 330. And moves very well. When you hear that size, you think, man, he's just coming off the ball, coming down. Maybe can't move, but he runs around well. Plays offensive tackle, can pull and wrap to a linebacker. So he will definitely have some chances. You hear 6 foot. Sometimes people get hung up on that, but definitely his ability. He definitely has the ability to play at the next level, no doubt about it. Plays on both sides of the ball for us. Like I mentioned, he'll be a 3-year starter at left tackle and 3-year starter at defensive tackle for us. So looking for big things from him. Also returning up front, another all-conference player in Cole Nowlin. Cole is his journey there to being an all-conference player is kind of different. Last year he was actually not a starter at the beginning of the year, but he's one of those guys. He had worked hard, and I mentioned some of those guys going down. We had a senior tear his ACL in game 1, and Cole stepped in there. When that guy Brock got hurt, and started every game after that. Ended up an all-conference player, 2-way starter. Ended up starting on the interior, but started at defensive tackle and then at right tackle. And just one of those guys, when he got his opportunity, talk about taking advantage of it. Very, very happy with him. Yes, and now he's poised for a big senior year.
Yeah, thrown into the fire.
Yeah, exactly. He's ready to go now. And now you sit there with a guy that maybe would not have gotten all that experience last year, which he did. Now, got a 2-year player over there, as a 2-way starter, tackle, and defensive tackle. So in the backfield, got a returning all-conference running back in Demarion Billingsley. 2-way starter for us. He's started as a sophomore in the backfield. Of course, carried over last year, started his junior season at the back. Ran for, I think, 700 and some odd yards. I don't have his stats sitting right here in front of me, but over 700 yards rushing, a couple 100 yards games, and played very well, especially late in those wins against Barton, and then the playoff win against Newport. He had some huge games there, so really came on strong at the end. Also a starter at inside linebacker. Another senior that we're looking for big things from. Got a all-conference returner at outside linebacker in Cameron Sanders, and he'll play a little more offense this year. Just he didn't have to play much offense last year just because of the depth that we had at receiver, and a lot of those guys were seniors, but we've lost those guys now. So Cam was no, he's an outside backer. He's kind of like an overhang guy that, we ask him to do a lot. We'll ask him to line up on the outside shoulder of the tight end, stuff the run, but also go out and cover a number 2 receiver. So he's got to do a lot. He's a very versatile player. Can run, but he's also strong enough to sit in there and play the run too. So,
right. Not when he's on offense.
Yeah. Oh, and then offensively, he'll actually play an outside receiver.
Okay.
Like I said, just kind of he got a lot of reps this spring. He's still trying to come into it and kind of come into his own there on the offense, but caught the ball real well back in the spring. Moved another all conference receiver we had in Damian Burns. Started at receiver as a sophomore last year, and he's just one of those. He's an electric player. Very explosive. He's one of those guys. Every time he touches the ball, you know that he's got a chance. He's got a chance to make a big play. And this year, he will move from receiver, and he's going to play quarterback now. So, having a guy like that touch the ball every single down, and right. Just with his ability and his competitiveness, his drive, we're happy he's going to be the one touching the ball every play. So it's kind of
get too much focus on that. What is your offense exactly?
Well, we base out the spread.
Okay.
You'll see a lot of 2x2 trips and things like that. We're kind of a team that we do this, and every year it changes just a little bit. Like the last couple of years with Caleb Johnson, quarterback, we've thrown the ball, and had a lot of good depth at receiver. And Caleb left as the school's all-time leading passer. Well, Damian's a good runner. He can throw the football too. He's shown that ability as a backup quarterback last year, and then also when he was playing quarterback in junior high, he can throw the football. But his strength may be running. So, we can be very multiple. Formation-wise, it may not change much. We're still going to line up in, some doubles, trips with 4 receivers. If we have to bring in an H-back, we can do that. But, just scheme-wise, we run a lot of gap scheme runs, power and counter, things like that. So that's kind of when you see that, you think about us, a lot of teams that have played us for several years, we're just one of those teams. You know what you're going to see. It just depends on the year and, we're going to be pretty constant in our scheme, but just like everybody, we'll adjust it to our talent. That's kind of where we stand there. So, may see a little bit more a few more quarterback runs this year with Damian, but like I said, he can throw the football too. We still got some guys to go out there and catch him.
He's about how big is he?
He's about 5'11", 170. So and a very strong kid. And that's one thing that I mentioned. The strength of our players. That's one thing that those guys have really, really bought into is the weight room over the last several years, and definitely gonna help us this year too. Just because that especially when you get in later in the year, maybe in the fourth quarter, they get tired tackling some of those guys that don't mind putting their face in there and being physical and finishing runs. So. Like I said, just glad with 2. It's nice when you have 2 all-conference players in the backfield returning for you, even though Damian's returning at receiver. He's going to move to the quarterback.
Yes, sir. Is there any more all-conference that we didn't mention yet?
No, I don't think so. I think we got all the returning all-conference guys.
So how many you have back on offense?
Let's see.
This returning starters.
I think we had 6 returning starters.
Like you said last year, you had a bunch on defense or offense?
On both sides. It's just, I think, let's see, we had 1, 2, I'm just sitting here looking at our depth chart. I guess it's 5. We have 5 returning offensive starters. It's kind of funny when you look at our returning starters because we had a couple guys that started up front for us last year, early in the year, but their season ended early, so you sit there with 5 full-time starters back, but 2 then you could throw 2 more because we had 2 more guys that started some games up front.
Nice. Defensively, what about when you're returning?
I mentioned a couple of these guys. We base out of the forefront. We returned some experience up front with Ross, who I mentioned earlier, and Colton Island on the interior, and then at defensive end, Mason Hernsberger, who is a junior, and he's one of those guys from last year that his season ended early because of a knee injury, and so he was actually starting at guard and was seeing some defensive time, some time defensively at end and tackle. So he's one of those guys that he can go inside or outside depending on where we need him that week, or which four D linemen are in the game. And then also up front, kind of looking for got several guys actually up front. Keener has Bryson Keener on some experience. Braden Dunn on some experience there. Those guys are kind of battling for that other defensive end spot. And then at linebacker, I mentioned Demarion Billingsley, returning him. And Keegan Jones actually started several games at linebacker for us. I think he started about 6 games at linebacker. So, he'll compete with Dan and Bent for that other linebacker spot. So, kind of sets our front there. Return a lot of experience up there. So, pleased with those guys.
Something from what I'm seeing, it sounds like you've got at least a little bit of experience at every level on both sides.
Right. I think the only that returning experience, there is quite a bit on the defensive line and at linebacker. Now where we our defensive backs is where we lost a lot. We lost our top 6 defensive backs to graduation, and that's where we're looking for some other guys to step up. And we've got a number of them that we feel comfortable with. Going into spring football, that was our number one concern was who's gonna, because we were trying a lot of different people in the defensive back, and ended up settling on a couple. We were starting to narrow it down. I mentioned Damian Burns a moment ago. On the offensive side, he's moved to corner, where he played a little bit of outside linebacker last year. And a newcomer, Zach Walker, also doing a good job out there at corner. Felt pretty good about those guys. And then Colton Vogel, who is a senior, who also started at receiver last year. So he's a guy that is going to maybe see a little bit more defensive time this year at corner. And then a couple guys battling at safety, McLean Keithley and Tristan Strickland. Those guys kind of ended the spring still battling out at the safety spots.
Okay. McLean Keithley and Strickland.
Yes.
Okay. I remember that Keithley name when you're playing Bismarck again this year. That's a pretty big name over there.
That is actually so. Bismarck's head coach, DJ Keithley, is actually graduate of Harmony Grove High School.
Oh, really?
So, and that is actually McLean's uncle.
Okay.
So there's a connection there. Yeah, he's got 2 sons over there. One's the quarterback, and one is inside receiver.
Yes. Are they all coming back?
Yes. Yeah, I think the quarterback's a senior, and inside receiver will be a junior. So a lot of Keithleys on the field that night.
For sure.
Yes, sir.
Nice. So, I appreciate that's a lot of information on the returning starters.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a great class that you lost, but still got a lot of guys trickled in here and there. Like you said, y'all were the most concerned with the defensive backfield kind of going into spring and off season. Looks like you've made some movement there. You got some guys. Tell me about Walker. Is he a senior?
No, he's going to be a junior. Just wasn't in the program last year, and rejoined us in January, and maybe one of our best just pure athletes. Can dunks basketball with ease, looks smooth. I'm sure he'll have some growing pains just as far as learning what to do. But he seems to pick everything up pretty well just in the spring.
Right. That's nice to hear. Defensively, you mentioned your forefront. Mm-hmm. You talked a lot about outside linebacker. Were y'all like more of a 4-4 last year?
Yeah, well, it just depends. We can line up. We can bring that. We try to be multiple depending on the offense that we're facing. Because with those outside linebackers, we may look like a 4-4. We may look like a 4-3 look. All it depends on is, one of those outside linebacker spots is more of a strong safety that we ask a lot of. Where he can play up on the line of scrimmage or back in coverage in like cover 2 or something like that. So, I mentioned being a forefront because, we may be a 4-2, we may be a 4-3. You just never know. It just depends on. It's really coverage based, is what it is.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's. Your front kind of stays the same for the most part before, but that kind of mixes it up for other teams. You know,
Right.
you bring in the personnel, what you're going against,
Right.
a little bit more speed or a little bit more size, depending on who you're playing. I like that philosophy personally. I think it works out the best overall. Tell me a little bit about your sophomores. You talk to me a little bit about some of the guys that you haven't mentioned yet that you think might contribute quite a bit this year.
Well, sophomores that contribute. Travis Willingham is definitely one that we feel like could be a contributor. He along with Logan Nip, just because of our depth in the backfield, we don't return a lot of experience back there. Nip and Willingham may see some time in the backfield. Willingham could also, and Nip could also see some time at linebacker. So those guys may see them on the field along with Dagan Hall. Is probably going to see some time up front, offensive line and defensive line. He'll provide some depth up there and maybe challenge for one of those other starting spots on the offensive line. The offensive line is, I mentioned, we returned the Nyland and Ross. We got several there that are competing for those spots. I mentioned Hernsberger was one of those that, he's kind of you can kind of classify him as a returning starter also at guard. And then a couple guys that saw some experience. I mentioned Braden Dunn. He's got some experience up there. Drew Horskamp actually started the season at center last year and ended up having a knee injury and ended his season early. And then, so you kind of classify him maybe as a returning starter, though it was only, the scrimmage in game one. And then Hayden Crawford, he was a sophomore last year, upcoming junior, and he showed a lot of promise in the spring. So we got quite a few guys competing for those other spots, and to go along with the sophomore hall. So we don't have a ton of depth up there right now. We got a lot of guys. Those guys are battling, but football, unfortunately, it's a game where you're going to get some guys banged up, and we got some guys that are going to have to step up.
Yes, sir. Talk to me a little bit about your coordinators, your assistant coaches on this team.
Okay. Ryan Thomas serves as our offensive coordinator. He is also beginning his 7th year here. He came over with me. We were actually together for, 4 years over in Houston also. Worked with him for a while. So he runs our offense. A lot of the things that we do are kind of his philosophies, being a gap scheme run team, being very multiple, the passing concepts. We've been pretty consistent there, and having a guy like that as your coordinator that you can count on, he just rolls along. I serve as the defensive coordinator. Just feel comfortable on that side of the ball. And always had Coach Thomas offensively, so I spend a lot of my time on that side of the ball. Other assistants, other guys on staff, we're very fortunate. A lot of experience with Coach Thomas, and then throw in Coach William Chambliss. He started his 4th year here, but he also, I worked with him at another school for several years. So, we probably worked together a total of 14 or 15 years total. So, been with him for a while. So he owns a lot of experience. And then got some newer guys, Drake Wilson, and Caleb Woodfield are both starting their have been with us for 2 years. They're both starting their 3rd year here at Harmon Grove. Great young coaches, a lot of promise. I see those guys having great careers coming up, and they bring a lot of knowledge with. I think Coach Wilson spent a year as a student assistant down at SAU, and then Coach Woodfield, graduate of Mount Ida High School with Coach White over there. And so,
get that non-conference game lined up.
what's that with? We're not with Mount Ida. They are. But Coach Woodfield, also and then played at OBU, so he has a lot of experience. Even though they're very young, they have a lot of experience, and so those guys are great additions to our staff. And then added one this year. So our assistant coaches. Jonathan Hale, who will be spending his first year. He actually joined us back in January on staff, but he'll be our first year as a full-time assistant in the football program. So look forward to those guys. Very blessed to have some great assistant coaches.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like you really got a well-established program going on. You got some good coaches, got a lot of experience, a lot of continuity. Got some really good players that are coming back to help you. If you were gonna tell me your strengths and weaknesses of this team, what do you? I mean, I can kind of tell you what you told me. What I feel like it's going to be your lines up front sound like they're going to be pretty solid. Got a new quarterback. It's going to be pretty mobile. See how the passing game works out. I want to hear from you. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much on the same page. I think defensive our defensive line we're pretty comfortable with just with that experience that we have up there. The offensive line, we talk about line play. We're comfortable at the tackle spots with Ross and Nyland. It all depends on how those couple guys I mentioned, Hernsberger and Horstkamp coming back from injury. If those guys can pick up maybe where they were last year, and then have somebody take that other guard spot. We feel pretty good with our lines. And that'll be good for a new quarterback. You mentioned his mobility. I think our run game, hopefully that's a strength for us with our line play and our backfield. And then, but we've got some guys that can catch the football. It's just not as much experience as we've had in the past. So got a lot of a lot of spot starting out there at receiver, and then defensively, of course, the question mark is going to be our defensive backs that we've already mentioned. I think we're on the same page as far as what our strengths and weaknesses are. We lack some experience in the defensive backfield, but there's some talent back there, and those guys and I have. Those guys are going to work hard. We've got all the confidence in the world that they're going to be successful back there.
Yes, sir. Got a good schedule coming up. Like we mentioned early in the interview, the conference has changed back to how it was when we first got here.
Right.
The conference last year was pretty tough. This conference is still pretty tough. So I don't think you get a huge break one way or the other. You got Prescott and Parker Chapel, Smackover, Bismarck, Center Point, Horatio. So still going to be really tough sledding. So, but I think, it sounds like y'all really have a lot of good stuff coming back. You've got a good, solid program here, the tradition, the culture. You mentioned the weight room multiple times. Guys competing as well. You just talked about those open spots, receiver and the defensive back, if you're kind of solidifying that still. That usually creates a lot of good competition in your team. So, as a coach, you definitely love that. So, sounds really exciting to be a Harmony Grove Hornet. Be excited about this year coming up. Coach has been here for several years now. This will be the 7th or 8th?
Beginning the 7th.
Beginning the 7th. And, we're close last year. Sounds like good things are right there around the corner again. So, everybody be watching out here for the Ouachita County Hornets. And one last thing, Coach, what do y'all have to do this year to be successful? What do y'all have to do to say this was a successful season? Well,
I think it's all going to come down to how we adjust to the change in offense. Because we're going to look a little bit different, and we're able to establish an identity. I think offensively, because right now that's kind of up in the air where, everything kind of went through Caleb the last several years. That's changing now. And so if we can establish some sort of identity, whether it's throwing the football or running, whatever that is, we have to establish and know who we are offensively.
Yes, sir.
And then, defensively, I think if we can stay healthy defensively, we've got a shot to be pretty good. And then the conference, we can't have any slip ups. You mentioned the tough conference, and we got to be able to, we've got to find that identity and be healthy going into those big games with Prescott and Bismarck. In the conference season, because we play them back to back. Luckily, they're at home, but looking at those guys, among others, you got Center Point and Smack Over and others. I mean,
Yes.
it's a tough conference, but
Right.
in order to kind of get over that hump, I think sitting there and establishing that identity, I think that's going to be big for us, and know who we are, because there's nothing wrong with being us. That's what we tell them all the time. And but we just got to know, we got to figure out who we are with some of the new faces that we have.
Yes, sir. And you are going to get battle tested quick. So Junction City, and this year they are poised to be one of the tops in the state in their class. And, Are you at their house? Or
We are going to Junction.
Yeah, going to Junction, and you're going to get tested right off the bat.
Right.
And that's a hard one to find out your identity right there. But then you get Rising, it's no slouch for sure. And then Haynesville, which is, you talked to me a little bit about their history and how they've been a powerhouse down in Louisiana, won multiple state championships over the years. So you're going to be battle tested when you get into conference play right off the bat. It's not going to be, you're not going to have any time to rest, really. So
we wouldn't have it any other way.
that's right. Iron sharpens iron. You start out with a tough non-conference, and hopefully that pays huge dividends down the stretch.
Right.
This is here with head coach Camp here of the Harmony Grove Hornets. I want to appreciate you coming on here today.
I appreciate you having me.
Miller with Hometown Sports with the Arkansas Sports Network, part of our preseason preview. Thank y'all.
Thanks again for joining us on the Arkansas Sports Network's Hometown Sports Football Preview. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Arkansas Sports Network on YouTube to catch more previews and all the latest updates on your favorite teams.